Oh man, does my fiance have some of the most entitled family members I've ever come across. Well, I'm just gonna go ahead and say I'm smarter than them. It's that simple. They tried to ruin something very close to me and my fiance, but I saw it coming a mile away, and I decided to put a little plan in place to stump them, and at the same time embarrass them and make them feel, well, worthless. Hey, my name's Liam, and I was excited to get married to my girlfriend Ariel, but unlike me, she was not fortunate enough to have a loving family where my birth mom and dad both showered love upon me. I had a perfect family with a healthy relationship with both of them, and so did my parents, and I had always been grateful for that after witnessing Ariel's parents who were selfish and greedy, especially her stepmother Laura and her sister Betty, who had been terrible towards her since her father Jacob brought them into their family. They constantly excluded her and mistreated her, and Ariel also had a dislike for them but only stayed in the same place because of her dad, who was in ill health condition, and his pension covered all the medical expenses. So, thankfully, Laura and Betty did not have as bad of a relationship with her dad as they did with Ariel, or things might have become worse for her. I had not known Ariel for long before, but only knew that she was the person who was brutally honest to everyone and would not think twice to stand against her own people if she found them doing anything wrong to others. She was the most unbiased person who had the courage to stand up against wrongdoing, and this is the trait of Ariel that had caused a conflict between Lara and Betty because Betty doesn't take Betty's unreasonable action seriously. And Lara always sides with Betty because she's oblivious to her daughter's love. But this trait was the only reason my parents liked Ariel. My mom is very fond of Ariel, started looking forward to making her part of our family as soon as she met her. And my mom is the reason that she motivated me to marry her because mom finds a reflection of herself in Ariel. They had a great bond together, and I was glad that Ariel had finally found the love of motherhood when she was with Mom, and I want her to give family love to her. So one day, with the support of my mom and dad's agreement, I asked if she would marry me. We were all glad that she agreed, and she invited me to dinner because she did not know how her family would react, since she's never bothered to share anything with them. This is the first time that she's brought somebody home, so she doesn't trust how her parents will react to it. To begin with, one step at a time, she asked only me to come to her place, and the next day I visited and I understood her reason for not calling me along with her family. I was looking at some alien creature. My future mother-in-law Laura exaggerated in front of Ariel's dad about how darling Ariel had been to bring boys home. Skeptical questions about her, she asked me some uncomfortable questions like why I like Ariel, what's so special about her, why I want to marry her in the first place, and how much I make in money. She was surprised to know that I was from a well-settled upper-middle-class family with a posh background. She gave a backhanded compliment to Ariel for catching a big fish. Well, she didn't even hesitate to say that she would share my stuff with her family as well, and she also dragged her daughter into every conversation, trying to portray her as an ideal daughter, and Betty was on the same line as her mother. She was trying so hard to impress that it had become downright awkward. Not only that, Laura asked if I had any brothers or acquaintances for Betty, or by any chance if I would change my mind. She would be glad to take Betty's hand instead of Ariel's. She said that she was very thankful that love is blind and that I've chosen Ariel to be the wife. Or she would have remained unmarried with the bitter tongue and unruly behavior she had. I agreed, saying that love as pure as motherhood is also blind, and she took the hint and changed the topic instead. She bought me the tea and the new crockery. She said that this is the most ancestral crockery she owns. It is an antique, but I knew it was fake, branded cheap one, and I did not mind correcting her. She did not end up with that. She talked about cost and pricing so much that she kept on telling the prices of almost everything she owns. Her purse, her dress, the curtains, the covers, you name it. Almost everything was told as doubled as it seemed to be. I knew everything she owned was fake and cheap, and I've seen Ariel trying to cut the cost of her expenses to manage her finances. I knew she struggled hard to complete her education. It did not take me enough time to know that Lara and Betty were both very materialistic people. They tried to show off as much as they could to portray themselves as well as possible. They were not at all humble, accepting the modest lifestyle, but whatever means they could. That was only Ariel, who does not bother to seek the approval of others in terms of her finances and social status. Lara and Betty's world revolves around money, and hence they were more than excited to welcome me and make me part of their family as long as I would act according to their wishes. Ariel was a little embarrassed by her stepmother and sister's behavior. She also introduced me to her dad, and her dad seemed okay to me until I knew that he mostly sided with his wife and stepdaughter. I thought of inviting Ariel's parents to my place in the upcoming week, and I waited for them to come, but before that, I told my mom everything about Lara, Betty, and her dad. They were disappointed to find such a selfish and greedy family in Ariel. On the day of the dinner, when Ariel's family stepped into our place, Lara and Betty dressed in their best clothes, and Betty had outdone herself with so much over-the-top dressing sense, along with Lara, as if the celebration were meant for them. They were quite overdressed for the occasion of their own family member, Ariel, who was their daughter and sister and the reason that we were having the occasion in the first place. The way that they dressed almost matched their behavior, as they tried their best to steal the limelight from Ariel and made everything about themselves by sidelining her. The dishes and the arrangements were made especially for Ariel's taste, but they were quite judgmental about it. But my mom and I hardly paid any attention because we knew Ariel, and she did not make an effort to come up in between or cut them off. She was enjoying her dinner and conversation with my dad as Lara was dragging her dad as well in between. Both me and Mom found Betty to be a spoiled brat when she snapped at her own home servant for serving her the wrong drink because she was confused with multiple orders at the same time. Ariel instructed her to apologize in an instant, but she didn't listen to her. So Ariel apologized on her behalf, and Betty still believed that she did no wrong, instead argued that servants are meant to be treated this way. Ariel snapped, saying that servants have more income than she could earn in an entire year, and yet they're humble enough to serve her. Betty furiously threw her meal and stormed out, and Ariel followed, trying to stop her. But after some time, Betty came back, apologized for losing her temper, and asked if she could have a hand on my Mercedes. I figured she must have seen it parked outside my house, and she wants to have a ride. I refused, saying I could not risk putting such things in her hands, and Lara sided with her, saying I needed to worry not at all, and a little scratch won't hurt me. Well, Betty added that she was just asking for a ride and not the car, at least. After seeing how many I own, I refused, saying she should just stop keeping an eye on other people's stuff. I could not hold back from saying that she was greedy, and Lara got furious and took Betty and her husband along with her, saying that I'm too rude and a rich brat to share things with his future sister-in-law, and they left Ariel behind them. Ariel, who was disappointed by their behavior, asked for an apology to my parents numerous times, and said she tried to talk it out. I wish I could support Ariel in the matter, so I volunteered to come along, but she said that she would think of some way to convince them. I was confident that she could. Mom, on the other hand, already disliked Betty, doesn't mind her existence as long as she can get married to Ariel and make her daughter-in-law. Update number 1. Hey guys, things were not turning out as I expected them to. I thought it would be easier to get her parents convinced, but things were heading in a very different direction. I got a call from Ariel in a day or two, and she sounded like, a little happier this time, saying that we could convince her parents as they have an anniversary party, and it's the best time to mend things with them and finalize our dates for marriage, or get engaged as soon as possible. I agreed with her and called my parents to schedule them to meet them, and Mom, though not fond of her family, came for Ariel and my sake. It was futile for Dad to deal with my bratty and full-off self-stepmother and stepsister. He said that he would only be bothered by marriage and would not want to waste his time interacting with them, and I didn't force them after all. My dad's time was important, as people wait months to get a meeting with him. On our way to their home, Mom had already warned me that they both had their eyes on the money and wealth. I should stay careful around both of them, and I agreed with her and parked my car in front of their house. We reached sooner than expected as we were on time and found Laura and Betty scribbling over the expensive turkey that they had bought and cooked dinner with, saying that it's the first time they've enjoyed such an expensive steak at my place, and now to show off they have to cut their weekly budget to serve turkey, and that too, being selfish, denied them the blessings of a life to share with them. Betty complained about the car I owned and refused to borrow it for a ride, and Laura thought that she had a plan to think it over. At least they deserve a share in their son-in-law's wealth, right? After all, she is his mother-in-law and deserves to be treated like such. And they should spend some on the wedding if they can afford to do so. My mom and I listened to a bit of it when my phone rang. It was asking me where I had been, and I rang the bell, but it was not working, so I knocked and found her standing. Ariel welcomed us warmly and greeted us like a great host. Laura and Betty did not invite many people because they did not have a budget to flaunt right now since the small-scale business was going through a loss. They hardly invited anyone except us, though they were more than eager to show off their rich son-in-law and his family. They wanted to save a surprise for the wedding as they were superstitious about things like evil eye, etc. When Laura hosted my mom, she asked about our plan for our wedding and engagement. My mom kept in mind the conversations in which she asked to finalize the engagement for the time being and later decided about the wedding arrangements. This was the best way to bypass this wedding conversation because I wanted to discuss that with Ariel in private after knowing the intentions of her family members, and stopped Mom from bringing up the topic. We finalized the engagement, but Laura could not hold back and said that she wants a grand wedding with a maximum number of people invited. After all, Ariel's getting married to such a rich guy, but since their business was going through a rough phase, they could not afford it by themselves, indirectly hinting that we should pay for it. Before we could answer, Ariel intervened, saying that, well, that could be decided later on and that we would discuss the details privately. Laura and her husband were more than happy with the gifts that we bought for their anniversary. Betty hoped that she would get something, but I said the occasion was meant for them, and there's no point in her asking for a gift. Betty had instant hatred for me at that point, and she made a toast that she would love to arrange the wedding for her dearest sister all by herself, because she wants the wedding to be perfect and can't wait to be her bridesmaid. I suggested going for a small wedding because I would like to save for our future, and she said that it would cost more than my Mercedes that I already own. No more, she promises. I told her to hold her tongue because she was crossing her limit, but she was drunk, and there was no point in arguing. That evening when I reached home, I got a call from the promotion of my job, and I was transferred to Europe for it. I could apply for it within a month to initiate the procedure. I was excited but tensed about the wedding arrangements where my in-laws were waiting to extract the most wealth from me. Update number 2, 3 days later. Hey guys, some people are getting on my nerves, right? And the more you try to get rid of them by submitting to their demands, the more they find new ways to exploit you. Please help, so this is how it went. I wanted to get married sooner as I was running out of time, and my in-laws were trying to exploit the opportunity. It was Betty's birthday, and I was invited on her birthday as well, and I didn't want to go, but Mom insisted on it, and Ariel was already at the door to pick me up. She knew that I was unwilling, but she was only eager to spend some time with me and hoped to convince her dad at least to agree to the small wedding. Ariel almost dragged me along when Betty insisted on inviting me along, and she could not figure out why. They stood at the bus stop to catch a bus to reach the restaurant, and while Betty taunted me that my cars were kept for the showcase and not for the ride, I did not want to snap at her since it was her day, and I drove them to the destination in my car. They've booked a fine dining restaurant with a 5-course meal beginning with an expensive champagne, and I somehow suspected from their looks that they already don't have enough money to buy mineral water. Forget a 5-course meal. That was all going to be pushed upon me. So, I texted Ariel quickly that her sister and Mom don't have money with them, and Ariel was surprised by this. Somehow sneaking into Betty's clutch and finding it empty, She could not control her anger and snatched it from Laura as well, only to find none of them had any money. Enraged by this, she canceled all the orders that were previously placed and paid for whatever amount that she could afford, even if it wasn't enough. I came to her rescue and paid the rest, which was more than half. It had created a scene among the people when her family turned up without cash at a restaurant. Embarrassed by her family, she leaves the restaurant after apologizing to me. I followed her outside and told her that I had eavesdropped on the conversation between Laura and Betty about their plans when me and Mom both arrived to meet them on the anniversary of her parents. They were planning on getting what they deserved, like shares in my wealth, and blaming Ariel for being selfish enough to let them enjoy the benefits of my money. Ariel was furious and wanted to confront them, but I stopped her, saying that we did not have enough time to deal with this because I'm going to get transferred to Europe soon and I only have a month to apply for it. So it would be better that we get our court marriage arranged since they're not going to agree to a small-scale wedding and we just need to have some savings to start our new life in a new country. Ariel did not argue with me on that, and I told her that until they agree, we should instead get a court marriage to escape their evil plotting or whatever they're up to. So they could not create any obstacle to our wedding. Ariel agreed with me, and I talked to her to arrange a lawyer. My engagement day was coming very soon, and our in-laws were already preparing to create problems in our marriage. I saw Laura, Betty, and her dad coming out of a restaurant. Betty was mad at me, kicked my car, and broke its headlight, leaving it with dents and scratches since wine was already in effect. I held Ariel to not lose it or scream at her on the streets, unlike Betty, who was already doing that. Before engagement, Laura came with Betty to my place, saying that she could not get Ariel engaged since I had not stopped Ariel from paying the restaurant bill. And since it was Betty's birthday, he could have paid it for her special day. I reasoned that they should not have tried to take advantage of me by trapping me in a situation to pay. Instead, if they had asked me nicely, I would have happily arranged the party for her. Laura, being an opportunist, came up with a list of items required for Betty and Ariel. They were on the jewelry, clothes, and ring shopping list, and she said that she wanted an engagement to be perfect for the first daughter's wedding, but she could not even afford the bare minimum. At least I should be responsible for my future wife and her family. Reluctantly, I signed a check to them to cut off the drama because engagements will be happening in 2 days. Laura told me not to tell this to Ariel, and I agreed, but denied buying them rings since I had bought them myself. They agreed and were ready to prepare for my engagement and looked forward to me being their son-in-law as long as I would not act according to their wishes. Update number 3. Hey guys, thankfully I have finally gotten rid of my toxic in-laws who were trying to scam me out of the money, and by following your suggestions and not trusting them, I've saved myself a lot of trouble, and I thank you for that. On the day of the engagement, I expected Ariel to be dolled up and looked her best after paying the amount for her, but it was the complete opposite. I saw that Ariel had only done the bare minimum, and Laura and Betty were really dolled up in the most expensive outfits, along with professional makeup by a beautician. There was no way that one could recognize Ariel as a bride-to-be or a fiancé. I was dissatisfied with enragement, and the money I had given them was not spent on the person I paid for. So, well, I was furious, but there was no use in showing that, and Mom was also disappointed, and I learned that I could not trust them even a bit. We got engaged and were waiting eagerly for the wedding bells to ring. Betty came to me and apologized for her misbehavior and said she would consider her apology accepted if I allowed her to plan the wedding, and she's given me the information of the planner that she's arranged because he is her boyfriend, and she wants to bring him the first client by bringing Ariel and me as their first deal. Ariel, having a soft corner, wanted trying to apologize and told her to nail the details and finalize it. I told her to mail it to me and I would revert to her later, although I was not going to. So I told my dad to find more about him, and I was already occupied. Dad pulled out his contacts to learn about him. The next morning, as the marriage dates were not finalized by Ariel's parents, I called her up to come in for the court marriage without telling them. I told her we had reached the place where Mom and Dad, as witnesses, got us married. It was quicker than I anticipated, and after it was done, Dad received a phone call from his friends to ask for help as they have been scammed by the wedding planner, who had been taking the advance from them through a check payment. and now he refuses to answer calls for them. Dad looked worried about him because he was his close friend, so I was bothered and asked for a picture. My jaw dropped when I saw it. I checked my mail and it was the same picture of the so-called wedding planner. Ariel was also shocked to find Betty involved with him, and we both reached home hoping to meet the wedding planner, and I talked to Betty about him. Ariel refused to believe that Laura was involved in this, but it was obvious why Betty constantly kept on targeting me and trying to get an advantage. And when she said that he was her boyfriend, she had known him for quite some time to know that he was into things like this, and there's chances that Laura must have known about it too. Which is why she would not let any opportunity leave her to take undue advantage in the name of being relatives, so we had a talk. When we arrived, we met the wedding planner who was already home, and Laura, not knowing that we were aware of it, said that he was her known acquaintance, famous for his exquisite arrangements, and he had agreed to plan the wedding as per our wishes, to make the wedding small. But they agreed on one condition, that the in-laws demanded we let the entitled sister-in-law decide our wedding decor, or they would just cancel our wedding. So, me and my fiancé looked at each other and just laughed, because we knew they were going to do something like that. And Ariel, finally convinced that Laura and Betty were involved in this, decided to call the cops, along with these other people who had been scammed by him previously. Ariel confirmed why Betty was excited for the wedding, and it was found out that she wanted to take the money in the name of the scam, because I was too selfish to share my leisure with them, as they never felt that they belonged to his family and only considered him a part of them. So, I'll be honest with you guys, I did not think that this was going to end up as a scam. I honestly thought that OP's fiancé's sister and mother just wanted to take advantage of OP, maybe get a little bit of money siphoned out of it, but at the ultimate goal, they wanted to make the decor really ugly and just try to ruin the wedding. That's not what happened, and this was way more devious than I ever expected. It was a pretty elaborate scam involving a very shady character who was also scamming other people, and I'm glad that he got caught. I do need to know your opinion on this story though, because it was a wild ride. What would you guys have done if you were in OP's position? Let me know your thoughts about it in the comment section. My name's Mr. Reddito. I want to thank you for joining me on today's stories. If you want to hit that subscribe button, go ahead, smash it right now for daily videos. Once again, hit that like button as well. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya!